Captain Natalie Artemis sat in the lead vehicle, eyes fixed on the GPS as it blinked uselessly on the dashboard. No signal. The desert ahead was endless, flat and beige, the sky strangely still. Around her, the rest of the UN Joint Operations Team moved in a loose convoy, 4 Humvees kicking up dust as they crossed unfamiliar terrain. They were tracking a missing team. No distress beacons, no bodies, just one eerie last transmission. Approaching storm, markers. Something's not right. Natalie replayed it on her earpiece again and again. Each time it sounded worse. The first team had gone dark 3 days ago. Command sent in Natalie's team to find out why. Marshall, her second in command, was riding shotgun. His eyes scanned the horizon. "Captain, Lynx found something up ahead," he said, radioing through. "Bring us in," Natalie responded, and the convoy veered toward Lynx's location. He was crouched by the edge of the road, running his fingers along strange tire tracks that led nowhere. The tracks just stopped, like the vehicle had vanished into thin air. "Tracks match the last team," Lynx said, "but they end right here." Dash pointed to the side of the road. "These markers, look." The stone slabs were ancient, jagged, each etched with symbols none of them recognized. As they stood, a strange wind picked up. Marshall frowned. "Weather was clear when we got here." Natalie turned toward the horizon, and there it was. A storm. It hadn't been there a minute ago, but now it loomed, black and churning, lightning flashing inside it. "That's the storm," Natalie said. "From the transmission." "Should we fall back?" Dash asked. "Everyone in the cars," Natalie barked. "Move, now." They turned the convoy around, tires kicking up sand. The storm was approaching faster than it had any right to. As they drove, the stone markers lit up with a low, otherworldly glow. The symbols on them pulsed and the air buzzed with energy. Then came the lightning, bolts that didn't just strike the ground, but seemed to reach for the vehicles. "Floor it!" Marshall shouted. Visibility dropped to 0. Natalie barely kept her car on the road, relying on instinct more than sight. The rumble became deafening. Then, the ground disappeared. Their cars flew off an unseen cliff, swallowed by the storm. The world flipped. Metal screamed. Then silence. Natalie came to lying in sand, her ears ringing. Her vehicle was upside down. She crawled out, stunned, bleeding from the temple. Around her, the others stirred, groaning. The storm was gone. The sky was blue, but everything else was wrong. They were in a desert, but not any desert on Earth. Jagged, rocky structures jutted out in the distance. The air felt thinner and hotter. Marshall stumbled over, holding a broken compass. "It's not working." "Try GPS," Natalie said. "Dead." "Where are we?" Marshall just shook his head. "Way off map." Axe ran up with the radio, shaking it. "Nothing." Static Natalie took a breath. "We go old school. Sun's east. We keep moving, find higher ground." Link called them over. He stood near the charred ruins of a convoy, vehicles blackened and melted. "It's them," he said quietly. "The first team, what was left of them." Their bones were scorched clean. Natalie stared at the ash-covered ground. "No weapon burns that hot," she said. "There's glass, Marshall noted. Lots of it. Sand melts into glass at extreme heat. Natalie crouched, inspecting the area. Something incinerated them. Fast. No tracks in or out. No attack by land, Link muttered. Could have come from the air? Before Natalie could reply, the sand erupted behind them. A massive horn tore through the surface, followed by a monstrous beast, part dragon, part rhinoceros. It roared and charged. Screams erupted. Bullets flew, ricocheting uselessly off its hide. Axe's vehicle was lifted and flipped like a toy. He didn't make it out. Shoot its eyes, Natalie yelled. Dash fired wildly, then screamed as the beast slammed into Steeler, lifting him on its horn. Blood sprayed. Steeler, still alive, pulled the pins on his grenades and shoved them down the monster's throat. The blast threw sand in all directions. The monster staggered but didn't fall. Move! Into the rocks! Natalie yelled, dragging Dash with her. They ran. The creature chased, crashing into stone walls. Eventually it gave up, circling and growling as they ducked into a narrow cave system. Inside it was dark. Quiet. Natalie forced herself to stay steady. Dash was shaking. Link and Marshall joined them moments later, panting. We're alive, Natalie said, more to herself than anyone else. That means we keep moving. A hiss echoed through the cave. Don't move, Marshall said. Natalie turned and was hit by a blur of movement. A spider-like creature leapt from the shadows, burying a stinger into her chest. Her world went black. When she woke again, she was hanging, wrapped in a cocoon of damp, sticky silk, surrounded by dozens of twitching egg sacs. She clawed herself free and dropped to the floor. Her pulse was weak, her limbs shaking. In the shadows, she saw hanging shapes. One of them was Dash. The other, Marshall. Both dead. A bag lay nearby. Inside, flares and a canister of oxygen. Natalie took them and moved toward a faint breeze. She lit a flare. The tunnel lit up, revealing rows of twitching spider eggs. One of them burst open. Link stumbled into view, half crawling. He collapsed. "Link!" she gasped, rushing over. He opened his shirt. Bulging lumps writhed beneath his skin. "They're growing," he whispered. "Get out." "No, Run!" A spider burst from the wall behind him. Natalie threw the oxygen and lit the flare, creating a fireball. The creature shrieked and burned. She sprinted, bursting out of the tunnel into the sunlight. The spiders didn't follow. She fell to her knees, gasping, the desert stretching out before her again. No map, no help, just the sound of wind and the weight of what she'd lost. Then she looked at the ring on her finger, closed her eyes. She would survive, and she would get home. Natalie moved across the desert alone, her pace slow and deliberate. The sun was brutal, but the silence worse. Every step on the sand carried risk. Something massive was beneath it, always listening. She'd seen what it could do. She couldn't let it hear her. Her supplies were nearly gone. The flare was spent. The oxygen canister empty. She clutched it anyway, a reminder that she was still breathing. At the top of a dune, she paused and scanned the horizon. Something shimmered in the distance. Wreckage. Ruins of ships, giant rusting hulls buried in sand. Impossible, but real. Movement. She ducked and pulled out her binoculars. A silhouette stood atop a distant ridge, humanoid, watching. The figure raised something, then fired. An arrow struck the sand beside her, bursting into a puff of red powder. Natalie rolled, pulled her pistol, and fired back. The figure vanished over the ridge. "Not friendly," she muttered, heart racing. She moved quickly, staying low. When she reached the top of the next hill, she saw him again, closer this time. Lean, armored, masked, with primitive but deadly-looking weapons slung across his back. It was the same person who had fired the arrow, the same one who had watched them earlier during the monster attack. He was the only other living human she'd seen in this world. She approached slowly, hands up. "I'm not your enemy," she said, voice low. He raised his bow again. "Stop," she warned. He didn't understand. Miscommunication escalated into violence. She lunged. He countered. Fists, elbows, weapons clashed in the sand. Natalie moved like a soldier, precise and trained. He moved like a predator, efficient and wild. They were evenly matched, but he was faster. He knocked her down, disarmed her, tied her hands behind her back, and dragged her through the dunes toward a jagged outcrop that concealed a small, hidden shelter. Inside, it was dark and cool, protected from the sun and from the monsters. Natalie waited, breathing through her nose, burning with frustration. Her wrists ached. The hunter left at dawn to scout. Alone, Natalie twisted toward a sharp rock embedded in the floor. She cut herself free. When he returned, she ambushed him. Another brutal fight broke out inside the shelter, lit only by thin shafts of morning light. It ended when both of them rolled through the open hatch and tumbled into the sand. The hunter landed hard, sliding toward a nest hole, one of the spider dens. Chittering sounds echoed from below. He was slipping in. The spiders emerged, dozens of them, eyes gleaming. Natalie grabbed his hand and pulled. She cut the rope on his wrists and helped him up just before the monsters could strike. They escaped together, collapsing outside the nest. For the first time, they didn't fight. They sat in silence for a long while, not speaking, because they couldn't. The hunter didn't know English and Natalie didn't know his language, but the tension had broken. They weren't enemies anymore. Later, using crude sketches in the sand, the hunter shared what he knew. He drew the horned sand monster, Diablos. Natalie nodded. She remembered the attack. Then he pointed to her RPG, buried somewhere in the wreckage, and shook his head. Useless, he seemed to say. Instead, he pointed to the spider nest, then mimed the stinger. Injected into Diablos. Poison. It was a long shot, but Natalie had nothing else. They planned that night. Natalie would act as bait. The hunter would kill a spider, cut the stinger, and make a weapon. It sounded insane. It also sounded like the only option. The next day, they executed. Natalie lit a flare and stood just at the edge of the nest. One spider emerged, then two. She backed up. The hunter leapt from the rocks, his blade a blur, slicing through the creature. He ripped the stinger free and retreated. Natalie ran. The spiders hissed but didn't pursue beyond the shadow line. Inside the shelter, the hunter worked. He attached the stinger to an arrow shaft, wrapping it tight with sinew and cloth. Natalie cleaned her weapons and tried his. She was shocked to find they held magic. A fire-based charge ignited from within the blades themselves. The hunter showed her how to use the sword, the bow, the grappling hook. Natalie trained late into the night. She learned fast. The next morning, they moved. They found Diablos again, its massive form gliding beneath the sand like a shark. The hunter created a distraction, throwing a barrel that exploded in the distance. The monster turned toward the noise. They ran for the buried RPG. Diablos turned. It sensed them, charged. They dove apart as the beast erupted from the sand. Natalie fired the RPG, hit the head, barely scratched it. Then the hunter moved. He climbed the dunes, fired the stinger arrow into its eye. Diablos roared and staggered, dizzy. But it didn't fall. Natalie reloaded, fired again. The explosion lit the air. Still, the monster charged. Out of nowhere, the hunter leapt onto its back. With a scream, he drove his sword into the skull. Diablo slammed its head against the rocks, knocking the hunter out cold. Natalie climbed after him using the grappler. She grabbed the sword, found the weak point, and jammed it deep. Diablos finally collapsed. Dust settled. Silence fell. Natalie dragged the hunter's body through the sand, step by painful step. A storm approached fast. She found a tent near the RPG wreck and set it up as the wind howled. She cleaned the hunter's wounds and held pressure where she could. Through the storm, she kept him alive. He woke the next morning, groggy but stable. They moved together, away from the monster's corpse, toward the one place that still felt untouched, the edge of the desert where the sky met the mountains. They cooked what little they had, sat quietly, rested. At night, Natalie woke to a shadow overhead. Wings. A creature flew above them. "What is it?" she whispered. The hunter didn't look away. "Rathalos," he said. In the distance, flames erupted. Then came the thunder of hooves, giant beasts stampeding toward them. From the firelight, figures emerged, warriors armed and armored, the hunter's old crew. They surrounded Natalie. One stepped forward. He spoke English. "Sorry about this," he said. Then he raised his hand, and everything went dark. Natalie awoke to the cold press of metal against her back and the creak of chains when she moved. She was in a cell, stone walls, iron bars, somewhere underground. Outside, torchlight flickered in a corridor. Her head ached from the blow. Her hands were bound again. Footsteps echoed. The hunter appeared. No mask now. His face was lean, scarred. He didn't speak, just unlocked the cell and motioned for her to follow. She didn't fight. Not yet. They walked through the torch-lit corridors to a wide chamber carved into the rock. Waiting for her was the man who had knocked her out, the captain of the hunter crew. Tall, weathered, armed, but calm. "I owe you an apology," he said in near-perfect English. Natalie narrowed her eyes. "You speak English? I learned it from the others, the ones from your world. Years ago." He offered her water. She didn't take it. "I locked you up because I had to be sure," he continued. "Every time someone from your world comes here, something follows. Monsters, chaos, and now... that tower." Natalie stayed silent, waiting. The captain looked at the ceiling, voice low. "The storm that brought you here, That's no accident. That tower was built by an ancient civilization. They mastered dimensional travel. But something went wrong. The portals started opening at random, rifts, collisions. They tried to shut it all down, and when they couldn't, they built a guardian, something to keep others out. He looked at her now, steady. Rathalos. The name hit her like a bullet to the chest. The team we were sent to rescue, she said. They were burned, incinerated. That was it. Rathalos. The captain nodded. It's the most powerful living weapon this world has ever known, and the tower is failing. The longer it stays open, the more unstable things get. We have to destroy it, but we can't do it alone. Natalie looked at the hunter, then at the captain. Her jaw clenched. Then let's kill a dragon. They moved fast. Natalie rearmed herself with a hybrid of earth gear and hunter weapons, steel with a pulse of magic, fire arrows, grapplers, the stinger blade, a second RPG. The hunter gave her a nod. They were equals now. They traveled through broken terrain, jagged rocks split by ancient machinery long dead, wires like roots across the ground. The sky grew darker as they neared the tower, a black spire rising from a crater in the desert, lightning curling around its peak like smoke from a cursed flame. Portals blinked open and shut across the landscape, some no bigger than a coin, others large enough to swallow a truck. From one, a giant bird-like monster fell screaming into the sand and died, crushed by its own weight. Everything was unraveling. The hunters formed up at the base of the tower, readying for the battle. Natalie checked her gear. The air was electric. Then they heard it, a sound like a hurricane screaming through a tunnel. Then fire. Rathalos burst from the sky like a meteor, wings spread, tail swinging like a wrecking ball. It breathed fire across the battlefield, instantly engulfing 3 hunters. They didn't even have time to scream. Natalie didn't freeze. She ran straight at it. The dragon swooped low. She leapt, grappler latching to its wing joint, swinging up over its back. The hunter followed, using twin blades to slash its side. Rathalos roared and spiraled. Natalie jammed her stinger blade into its mouth, but it knocked her off mid-swing. She fell, slammed into stone, just as the dragon dived again. A rocket screamed through the air. It hit Rathalos in the shoulder and staggered it, but didn't stop it. More hunters died. The captain kept shouting orders. Natalie struggled to her feet, face burned, heart pounding. "Shoot it when it charges," the captain yelled, "just before it breathes." The dragon rose, mouth glowing, preparing another inferno. Natalie ran directly toward it, pulled the RPG to her shoulder, waited. Boom. The rocket exploded in Rathalos's throat. It screamed, smoke pouring from its mouth. But it wasn't done. It reared up and charged her. She had seconds. Suddenly, the hunter landed on its back again. He roared a war cry and slammed his blade into the open wound. The dragon thrashed, spun, tail whipping. The hunter was thrown like a rag doll into a cliffside. He didn't move. Natalie screamed. Fueled by rage, she climbed the beast's wing, gripped the edge of its torn jaw, and stabbed the sword deep into the base of its skull. Rathalos gave a final, gurgling cry and collapsed. The ground shook. The storm above twisted. The tower flared with light. portals blinking in and out wildly, colors bleeding into each other. Natalie stumbled to the hunter's side. He was alive, but barely. She held him, crying silently, then looked up at the tower. "Shut it down," she said. The captain nodded. "We'll destroy it, but something's coming through." Behind them, the air cracked. Another portal. Another Rathalos stepped through. Larger, darker, wings lined with fire. Natalie didn't hesitate. She grabbed her weapon, turned to the others, and said, "Then we finish this." The hunter rose beside her, limping but ready. The captain lifted his weapon. The sky boiled, and they ran, shoulder to shoulder, straight into the fire.